Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Professional Oasis. I am Candy Speight, and I'm the owner of Order Your Steps, and I have the honor and privilege of being one of your Oasis guides. The Professional Oasis is a virtual sanctuary where ambitious women like yourselves can exhale, reflect, and rediscover their professional peace without needing to prove their strength. And along with me, I'd like to welcome you with my fellow professional, the Professional Oasis Guides. We have our creator and founder of the Professional Oasis, along with being the owner and CEO of Liberated Expressions LLC. We also have Karen Bryant, the founder of Bloom Theory Media. And we're here today to welcome you collectively. And we pray that you will find exactly what you need in this experience on today. Our episode today is entitled The Missteps Your Missteps Are Ordered To. It's an invitation for you to breathe, release shame, and walk in the confidence that your steps and missteps are ordered purposefully and part of your becoming. The Professional Oasis, we stand on 5 pillars. They are professional peace, spiritual empowerment, building to connect, rooted in community, and living with integrity. So to start us off, I'd like to share with you what I would consider a misstep that happened with me along the way. And it was during I believe it was one of our podcasts, possibly the very first meet and greet. And we were to pick a theme or topic that had been shared with us by the members of the Professional Oasis. And I kind of glanced at my paper and I pulled one that I just didn't give it any second thought. It was, I think at the time, entrepreneurial preparedness. And so I went on with my testimony on how the Lord had, ordered my steps in order for me to own my own business and be prepared for owning a business, because that's not something that was on my radar. But as I moved forward and my other fellow Oasis guides gave their testimony and their stories, it's like, why did I do that? Well, why did I pick that particular thing? That makes no sense whatsoever, because we have our own focus pillars. And with mine being spiritual empowerment, it's like I could have picked something faith-based or whatever, but I tried to recoup after they gave theirs because that made mine feel even more of a misstep. They're like, okay, let me circle back around and make this make sense to me and my audience. And so, I went back and did my little song and dance, and it just seemed to kind of pull together at the end. Well, it didn't end there, because the next morning, me and the Holy Spirit was having a conversation, and I was commiserating on, why do I keep doing that? I just keep making mistakes and missteps, and it just doesn't feel right. And da 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 da. And he's like, you do realize your missteps are ordered too. And it was like, oh, so what you mean is, me being a reformed perfectionist, that it is meant for me to make mistakes at times, because that enables the Lord to grow us. And if we thought we were perfect, what would he have to work with? So now we're going to share with you our experience and revelations of what our missteps may have revealed to us, now that we've had an opportunity to look back and embrace how the Lord has ordered our steps with purpose. So I'm going to turn it over to my one of my other Oasis Guides and allow them an opportunity to share.
Yeah, Candy. I'm going to take it from here because this topic is it's everything. It's very timely. It is juicy. I enjoyed your discovery when you came back around. Like, wait a minute, did I say the right thing? Because really, it allowed us to witness in real time what I'll speak for myself. I was going to say we, but what I frequently experience in my own life as a recovering perfectionist as well. And it's incredible because until you really stop and think about it, you don't think about it. You just keep doing and keep going and keep, you know, um, giving life to this narrative, to this good girl narrative, right? That you've got to be perfect. You've got to show up, 110%. And there's a lot of baggage that comes along with that. But mostly right now, as a lifelong educator, former teacher, former principal, I keep thinking about the hypocrisy I'm about to share with the world, because what we tell kids all the time, our students, is that mistakes are fine. You've got to make mistakes. That's how you learn. That's how you grow. And I'd rather you make a public mistake, so that we can unpack it and learn about the way that you're thinking, and that we can make suggestions about how to think of it differently, how to look at a problem or approach it differently, how to reframe it. But personally, I'm like, no, I got to show up. I got to be on point. I've got to be right because my whole reputation depends on it. And yada, yada, yada. Right. And it's something, it is really something. I'm thinking about my position in my family as a daughter, right? So not only am I the first daughter out of three children, I'm the middle kid, right? So the middle kid, I mean, shout out to all the middle kids out there. I mean, we're awesome in our own right, but it is also a very specific birth order positioning that I think fosters this I don't know, the firstborn might want to fight me on this, but I think as a middle kid, you really perfect that perfectionistic viewpoint on life because the firstborn is the firstborn and gets all the shine. The baby is the baby and gets all the love and the coddling. And that middle kid, I mean, you gotta hustle to stand out. And so for me, I think it was a mixture of sort of a God-given gift of empathy and connection that I have, but also with this, I'm going to say burden. If you flip it over, it's an opportunity, but with this burden of making sure that everything's all right. I'm the peacemaker. I can weave together, top and bottom, A and Z. I can bring these things together and make them work. And somewhere over the years, also trying to stand out, both inside my home and outside my home, I felt like I just had to have everything right. I got to look the part. I got to play the part. I've got to say the right things. I've got to learn the script of, you know, whatever environment I was attempting to become a part of, so that you wouldn't find any flaws in me, and so that you wouldn't reject me, right? Like you would not have the opportunity to reject me because I'm so great and I can,
Mhm.
all of that. I mean, so many, even as I say it, I'm like, my God, there's so much to that. But apparently I'm really good at it. I have been called a goody-two-shoes all my life, you know.
Mhm.
And at some point I just embrace it. I'm like, you're gonna get these two good shoes because I don't want to miss out on anything or any opportunity. Like, you are not going to reject me because I'm not good enough, right?
Mhm.
That was then. I
Mhm.
mean, it's a little bit of now, but I feel really good about being a reformed perfectionist, and allowing my two shoes to get scuffed up sometimes, and it's okay because they're good enough, and really learning to be more of myself. And you know what, myself is fine.
Yes.
With all my flaws, with all of my imperfections, with any scuff on it. And I tell you, when I approach life that way, I'm less anxious.
Mm-hmm.
I'm less trepidatious, and I just feel more in my skin.
Yes.
There's so many examples I could give you about that fit into that category, but I just thought I'd frame for you my journey thus far.
I'm not the only one, obviously. And Dr. Johnette, do you have did you have a moment of pause as you reflect?
Yeah, I just echo what Karen is saying, and it doesn't only happen to middle children; it can happen to the onlys out there that expected, to do right, to be the peacemaker. And I didn't like getting in trouble. I didn't like being the rebel. And the only reason I got in trouble was at the hands of a cousin who loved just doing the opposite of what we were told to do. And me not being able to say no to her would find myself in positions where I'm like, I knew it. I'm the level-headed, the reasonable, think things through, expected to do right kind of thing. And when I decided, I think I was in the third grade, to kind of test the limits, I decided that when the teacher's back was turned, I was going to blow my tongue out at her. And lo and behold, someone said, "Ooh, Johnette blew her tongue out." Now, mind you, other kids were doing it, but why was it that when I did it? Now, this is the story of my life. When I do wrong, guess who gets caught? So in some ways, it's like, even though I wanted to live on the edge, and I did my share of living on the edge, I have to believe it was like the Lord, like, nah, no, we're not doing that, to kind of reel you in. So I can relate. And the whole looking the part, playing the part, and the way that I sum it up are the great prophets of Public Enemy 1988. Don't believe the hype, right? You believe your own hype that, oh yeah, you got it all together. You can't mess up. All the while, all you're doing is setting yourself up for failure, because when you do, not if you do, but when you do, guess who is your biggest problem? Not everybody else, it's you. That's beyond me. I don't do this. How did I get here? How did I make this particular mistake? So yeah, I can completely relate. And growing up in a situation where, I don't know how far I want to get into this, but feeling like eyes were on you, being the product of two, in a small town, of two individuals. I just really thought our eyes were like, what is this kid going to turn out to be? And having this pressure to do things right in a way that I don't think other kids had that pressure. Always felt like I was in a fishbowl.
Wow.
But that's a whole other story.
Pressure.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because you brought up the point that it just seemed like you would go so far and the Lord would bring you back. And I was thinking of, when you think of, our missteps being ordered, I think of the story of the potter's wheel. When the Lord told Jeremiah, go down and watch the potter, because we're all those very unique, jars of clay. And when you think of, if you've ever watched a potter, he takes his hands and gently molds the wet clay. And when you think of the Lord doing the same thing, so he notices a crack, and so he just molds it away, smooths it away, or he notices something's not quite right. and he'll, but it's all in his hands. He said, you're in my hands. So no matter how much you think you're doing you, which we've all had that opportunity to do, he's using all of those cracks and imperfections to mold who he created us to be. And so I just think it's interesting when you think of even those moments in time where you believe that, oh my God, or even to the point where, oh Lord, how could I do something so ridiculous? Or how did I get here? He's like, okay, I got you. I'm just going to smooth that out and you're going to keep moving. Just not, you're not going to crater. I'm just going to continue to mold you because that's what it's all about. I mean, that's how he makes us all unique with those, what we consider imperfections.
Right. Right.
But anyway, how, when you think about something else you said, Johnette, about feeling you needed to be accepted, it's like, whose gauge were you using to determine how your behavior should be shaped before the eyes of everyone because of their expectation?
Right.
How did you fare with that growing up?
Yeah, that acceptance piece is huge. But if I could go back to God using or not allowing me to go so far. So funny story. So last night, so my mom is visiting. And so last night we were on our way home from dinner. And my daughter Jada was talking about how we were sharing stories. Jada started it off about how even when she wants to do something not terrible, but not fully acceptable, that she always gets found out, much like the story in my third grade classroom. My husband shared a story of how other people can be speeding. And when he's tried to speed, guess who comes behind him but a police officer? And my mother then chimed in. And so when I thought about it, I'm like, these guardrails are generational. And they're generational because God is leading the line, not just through my line, but through my husband, which is why us coming together as a pair part of it has been so powerful that these are generational guardrails, that God is doing something in my line from my great grandmother, mother, me, then Jada. And that's why it's like, yes, you're going to make mistakes, but there are some things I just kind of have to keep you right here. Yes, you'll see other people do some things, but that's not for you. Yes, you want to do these things. Yes, you want to hang with certain people. That's not for you.
Wow.
That's powerful.
It really powerful. And it hit me. And I'm like, oh, and that's why these conversations are so huge, because there's so many things that, oh my goodness, you are unraveling for me. And that's partially how we get revelation. And me knowing that now makes me even more excited, but even more intentional. Because now I can tell Jada this at 17 to say, look, there's more to this. Right. Don't look at it as a restriction. It is an opportunity. Go with it. And I know it hurts. I know it's lonely. I know it's like, why me? And it sucks. It really can suck, because it's like, I want to do all the things. But the father's like, nah, boo, I'm sorry. We got we got other plans.
Wow. That is very, very powerful. Very, very powerful.
That really is.
So amazing. Next revelation, I just realized. So my mother and I have recognized the various seasons in our mother-daughter relationship. The first season, me becoming a teenager, thinking I'm whatever, to the point where now my mother, you all have met her, mild-mannered, but y'all changed my world. I came out of my mouth with something crazy. I don't know what I said, but it was enough where my mother slapped me across the face. And needless to say, I never did that again.
Your sweet mother?
Yeah, right. And it shocked me. I mean, she's never done anything like that. And I was the kind of kid that if you looked at me like with sternness, I'm like, okay, because I didn't like getting in trouble. But it stunned me. I think she felt bad afterwards, but it was needed. It was absolutely needed. So teenage years, me going to college and coming back home for the first time, navigating independence, but then coming back home. Like, what does this look like? Like, at school, I come in when I want to. Are those the same rules at home? No. Right. So having to navigate that, navigating when I became a mother, and now we're at another phase and stage of her as a senior. And me working to embrace what that is.
Mm-hmm.
And me, in some instances, woo, not recognizing her. She's not the same person that she was, and I'm having to embrace that. And so as a result, it can cause some conflict, right? Where she feels like I'm not understanding her or she's not understanding me. This isn't new because at every phase, it's been that kind of conflict, right? And so I've been praying about it, and I have to apologize, when I'm, I don't know. But what I realized is that in my looking the part and playing the part, in my perfectionist whatever, what I'm doing is putting that on her. And what I see as, whatever level, like Karen says, she's good at it. Yeah, I've mastered a certain polish. I'll admit it, right?
Set yourself free.
Right, exactly. Giving the public what they want, right?
Give the people what they want.
Right, in all the ways. Who am I to disappoint, right? So in some ways, wanting her to show up the same way with a certain level of polish. But as she's, again, not that she doesn't, but as she's getting older, as we get older, there's some things we don't move the same way. And so I'm grappling with our change in our relationship, her change individually. And really, it's coming down to you have to let your mom be who she is. Period.
Absolutely.
And that's the process.
Yeah.
Now, did you say you have to let your mom be who she is?
Yep.
Oh, okay. And would you also say you have to let your daughter be who she is? Does that?
I'm better at that than I am my mom.
Got it.
I'm better at that. And it's interesting you say that. Jada wrote a poem in middle school and performed it in front of an audience. And I was so nervous. And I'm like, this and do that. And I had to step back because in that moment, the Holy Spirit was, you're not concerned, and I hate to admit this, but you're not concerned about her embarrassing herself. You're concerned about her embarrassing you.
Yeah.
So sit down, step back. She's got it.
Yeah.
And she did. It was wonderful. She didn't. It was a talent contest. She didn't win. She should have won. But anyway, but it was more about me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wow. And how many times we say we're protecting the other person, but it's all you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I
think that too speaks to allowing yourself to be yourself, because you've been in that space so long of being that goody-two-shoes or meeting other expectations or walking that fine line. And although you realize that God has his guardrails up, and that's for everybody, your guardrails are different than mine, and so on and so forth. But it's allowing yourself to be who he created you to be. And I can admit, I know for a fact, as I've gotten older, I've become more and more okay with me, as I grow. I'm not trying to fit the mold of other people, because I've earned it. I mean, how many years have I spent trying to be the right thing as I mold, as I raise my children or in the work environment? And it's like, I'm okay, because it's so hard to kind of maintain that persona. And I'm sure for your mom, is, even my kids say, "Mom, you're so more chilled now." It's like, absolutely. All the weight that I carry trying to raise y'all, being responsible for y'all, working and all that. Girl, please.
Right.
And I think that's what you have to, kind of let mom be mom. I mean, still be attentive and just observe more than trying to. You're not molding her. She's been molded.
Yep.
Right. So you just have to observe and kind of watch how she evolves and roll with it, versus trying to steer her in a way that really you can't when you think about it. Really think about it. So anyway, any more thoughts to share before we go on to the bigger and better things, or other things? Not even bigger and better, but other things.
There's more, but I think we can move forward. It'll probably come up in later on.
Okay. But it also, which is very interesting, it also moves us into that shifting our needs for other people's approval to what God has already affirmed us to be. Right. And that is, as I think overall, as we grow older, we realize more and more that the only person that really has to approve and affirm us is God, because he created us. And the more we realize that, you're more comfortable in your skin, but you also have to understand, and I'm going to read this to you because I found it very interesting. It's a translation of 2 Corinthians 10:12, and it says, "Oh, don't worry. We wouldn't dare say that we are as wonderful as these other people who tell you how important they are, but they are only comparing themselves with each other, using themselves as the standard of measurement." And when you think about comparing yourself to someone else, you're using their standard.
Right.
Think about it. When you're trying to get their approval or their acceptance, you're using their standard and not God's, or not God's and not yours, right? What is your standard that you're trying to live up to? Not theirs. Any thoughts on that, ladies?
Yes, absolutely. Oh, that is so good, Candy, because, I'm thinking about how much the three of us, and also all the ladies who are listening, how much we can relate to what's been said thus far about missteps, right? This idea of missteps. And when you said, whose standard of measurement are you using? There's always an origin to the fear of missteps that us perfectionists take on. You know, anybody who's had that feeling, there's always an origin to it. And I want to talk a little bit about these cultural standards, right?
Mm-hmm.
I do a lot of studying on this. So, you know, I think every podcast we've done so far, I know this is only a second one, but we talk a lot, you know, and I'm always bringing this perspective because I am a history buff as well, but I'm always interested in how the past shapes our presence and our future, right? And as a Black woman in America, there are cultural expectations, cultural landmines that we have navigated all of our lives, whether we've done it at a cognate level, you know, whether we realized what was happening or we saw something modeled in front of us and not really understanding the origin of that. But it has absolutely everything to do with a lot of the ways that we comport ourselves or this pressure that we feel to generate or cobble together this public image and then keep that public image going, right? And so, I mean, there's no secret that in our country, there is a legacy of oppression. And it's a legacy of oppression that negatively impacts people of color, Black folks in particular. And you can see that, like if you study even a cursory knowledge of history with an open heart, right, and with an open mind, you can see where I'm thinking about how Black folks in this country had to struggle, hard fought struggles to win humanhood, right, to be seen as human, let alone to achieve basic human rights in this country, right? And if you go back and study the civil rights movement, you will find that behind the scenes, you know, nothing was really happenstance. Like nobody decided, oh, I'm angry today, I'm gonna, you know, make a sign and go out on the street. But these public demonstrations were carefully curated. The people who were demonstrating were trained and educated on how to present yourself publicly, to strategically engage the camera, those who are looking. And you remember the civil rights movement of the 60s, the thing about it, not that there weren't protests or civil unrest, you know, years or centuries before, but now we had the technology that could stream by the way of television, you know, could stream these images into the living rooms of Americans across the country who were now for the first time maybe putting something they heard on the radio together with something that they see, you know, a fire hose, brutality against, you know, now it's creating a reality that our country had never before had to deal with at that level. You'll recall what I mean, right? So these folks put on their Sunday best to go out into the street to say, you know, hold a sign saying, I am a man.
Right.
You know, to be met with dogs, you know, being sicked on them or fire hoses being opened on them because the infrastructure of the time did not allow for them to be legally seen as a man, right? For example. Fast forward that a little bit to something a little less heavy, right? But still significant. Y'all remember Motown? We all know Motown, right? The Motown sound and Berry Gordy, you know, and what I love about the Motown story is that globally and across cultural backgrounds and racial descriptions, the Motown sound defined an entire generation of people and music lovers, right? And go behind the scenes of the Motown sound, and you will find the same thing, is that founder Berry Gordy realized that with the acts and entertainers that he was offering up to the world, that they had to look a certain way, sound a certain way, respond to the public and interviews a certain way, because he knew that this was very likely the first time that white America would have seen Black performers in their homes. Again, that magic of TV, right? And it might be their first opportunity to see like a Diana Ross, the Supremes in these gowns, so elegant and singing, baby, baby, where did our love go? Just in a way that people could receive them based on what their existing paradigm was of Black America, right? Very strategic. And so, again, as a Black woman growing up with Black parents, Black American parents, there was always that other component of the weight that you carried on your shoulder, that every decision you made was going to reflect on your race.
Yep.
I mean, right or wrong, that's what it was, And so being the goody-two-shoes that I wasn't going to do anything that was going to make us look bad. And you can define us as me and my mama and my daddy and my family and the entire Black race. I mean, how's that for how's that for a little bit of extra weight on your shoulder, right? But it was true, and it was true. And it's unfortunate that, that is something that's an origin story that I have for my own fear of missteps, and that many of my Black sisters and brothers can relate to, right? And so that fear is very real. And I encourage, or I challenge you. I mean, you may not be Black, right? But there is an origin to your particular brand of fear that you've been carrying about how you show up. Often it's tied to some cultural how you were brought up, what region of the country, what your family expectations were, and those are just things that we've got to learn how to identify, put a name to, so that we can see how it has played out in our lives and how it currently plays out in our life, so that we can now have the power over it to rejigger, as it were, as we like, right, to better serve us.
Wow. That's also very, very powerful. Very, very powerful.
Can I add one more thing to it? I'm sorry, I just thought about it.
Go ahead.
Because this just happened like a week and a half ago. Y'all know Michelle Obama? You may know her. That name may sound familiar, but I think we saw a real live example of this in real time happen, where she's got a new book that's come out. It's called The Look. It is a coffee table pictorial about the fashion and the style, of her time in the during the presidency, their administration. There was a clip from from her book tour where she talked about, again, back to what you were talking about, Candy, about, I wrote it down, whose standard of measurement, right, are you using? And she very candidly and vulnerably talks about one of the considerations she had to take when she was first lady for her hairstyles. And it had to fit a certain mold because, again, the national or global conversation could not have been about this Black woman's hairstyle. And if you know anything about Black women, our hairstyles are very versatile, and we take pride in the different ways that we express ourselves through our hair, right? I believe, Johnette, you talked about that, I think, in our other episode of our podcast. But she made a statement where she said, Black women's attempts to be publicly accepted, meant that we had to contort ourselves to the existing standard of beauty, which was set by white women in our country, which was straight flowing hair. And she said something tongue in cheek, that's why Black folks don't swim or can't swim, is because of the effort that it takes to, after we swim, to recreate our hair after the image and likeness of the acceptable standard of beauty in this country, right? Boy, that set off a firestorm across social media. And there was one young Black lady who really went in on Michelle Obama, saying, why would you say that? I don't think that way. You are feeding into a narrative and a stereotype. And I clutch my pearls because I'm like, ooh, first of all, this is Michelle Obama. But second of all, and then I paused, because have we done such a great job of our Black sisters following us to help them see that there are various standards of beauty and we no longer have to conform to that to build, have we done such a good job that you have no conception of it? Because she was a younger lady, right? That you don't get that, which in one way is, all right, we're doing it, because why should our children have to carry that weight of duality, the way that W.E.B. Du Bois shares, right? That you're Black and this, Black and that, you can never be just a woman, just a man, just, or was there something else at play? Did she just not get it because we haven't taught her enough about the legacy of Blackness in this country? It was interesting. I just wanted to put that contemporary, that tension, right, into play, because it was very real, and it cornered the internet for good 4 or 5 days. You may have seen it.
Yeah, that's good, Karen. Honestly, that whole component of double consciousness, I don't think as Black people in America, we will get away from that. I just don't. It's too ingrained. It's too rooted. It's too profitable. It's not going anywhere, at least for a long time, I don't think. And I think until it's a tricky place, because that young lady, I get that hasn't been her experience, but what happens, like many young folk, is that we want to move forward and forget the past. Baby girl, you cannot forget the past. Especially now where folks want to take us back to 1940, 30, whatever. It's critical. And you can't, I wish we could. Man, I wish we could. But there's danger. It's too dangerous for us to not keep those stories, that understanding in the forefront of our mind. Mm-hmm. We just can't afford to do it, because that's how, in my opinion, the trap gets laid, because you don't know from where we've come. Right. And folks who do know from where we've come, they're banking on us to be ignorant. And that's why we'll vote wrong. That's why we'll, talk about a misstep. So I get it, but no. And so as you were talking, it made me think about when you talk about the looking and sounding a certain way, and how the pressure of showing up. And I remember vividly me deciding that I wanted to be an articulate Black person. Right? And can you, right? Now, the problem and the shame of it is that and folks have had this conversation forever and ever. Why can't I be Black and articulate? Does that make me white?
Ma'am.
No. Or me trying to be white? No. Does that mean that there isn't a place for Black vernacular? Doesn't mean that at all. But every Black person I know understands we have to show up a certain way. Mm-hmm. Now, if people joke me a lot, it's like, Dr. Johnson, I like you because you're articulate, but then you weave in the vernacular. Right, let's blend it all together. I'm multi, right? So, but remembering being very deliberate about that, growing up in my small country town, having a father who was not very articulate at all, super smart. But at the same time, I knew that I did not want to sound like that. Just didn't want to do it. And remembering going to school and all of the things, you think you're cute, but what, whatever the case may be. But I'm like, I'm still going to be as articulate as I can. Mm-hmm. And what doors have opened just because I could speak well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. If folks are going to put you on a platform like Michelle Obama's hair, you have to be palatable. And then we're barely palatable just because my skin is black. Just barely. Because of what our country is made of. I mean, we might as well just call it what it is. Just like Sister Obama saying, y'all don't want me as president. You've shown that. You don't. No, you don't. You think you do, but you don't. You don't. You don't want that. And then two, let's take it a step further. If Barack Obama did not speak as he speaks, look as he looks, he wouldn't have been president. Because why didn't Jesse win? Why didn't, they weren't palatable enough. That Black Baptist preacher, oh, you got to be kidding. There's no way we're doing this. But Barack came with the right mix. Right? And
pun intended.
Right. Almost maybe didn't, there was a little concern because he had a real Black wife. And what I mean by that is she's a dark-skinned Black woman with kinky hair, probably. Right? So, and when we look, I remember being I remember in fifth grade, I was in fifth grade, and we had a substitute. And this was a white woman, and her parents lived across the street from my grandparents. I don't remember if I knew it at the time, but, the name, my mother's maiden name and my last name, very popular names, right? And she saw my name. Are you such and such's granddaughter? Yep, in front of the class. And she talked about my mother's parents live across the street. My father's parents live 2 doors down. Oh, well, isn't your grandfather? She called him by his nickname. But that nickname, I didn't have all the history behind it, but I knew if something's not right with this name. His nickname was Buck Ruffner.
Oh.
And she was like, isn't your grandfather Buck Ruffner? Yes. And in the most articulate that I could be, his name is James. And she was like, oh, because I had to show her, like, one, she didn't think anything of it, I don't think, because that's what people called him in the community. But in my fifth grade mind, you're not going to call this Black man Buck, even though it's what everybody else called him. But I'm going to be as articulate as I can and give you it's James Ruffner. And she didn't know what to say after that and went on about her way. So the pressure of showing up a certain way for all Black folk, wherever, and to be a good representative for everybody, including yourself, because you are not going to put me in that category. And I think going again back to expectations, because for me personally, my dad wasn't articulate, and because my dad wasn't, but seeing me speak a certain way, I think folks were even shocked by that, right? So there's again, it's this pressure. It's an unconscious kind of pressure, but you really do feel that.
Mm-hmm.
You're navigating and moving through, and then, like, going back, you start to believe your own hype, setting yourself up, maybe sometimes overthinking, how did you show up in that interview with the panel? How did you, was I articulate enough? What, the going back to the hair. I know people who have changed their hair to look the part for the interview. And once they got the job, they went to what was underneath the wig or the weave, the locks, the twist, or whatever, because they didn't feel like they could show up as themselves. And what is that doing to our psyche, but also us physically? To carry that through from birth to death.
Ooh. Ooh.
And
it's
did
making us sick. Sorry.
Right. And did I misstep for showing up as I am authentically? Did I misstep?
Yeah.
That's good.
That is really good.
Sets us up for those heart attacks.
Heart attacks.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll move right on in, right? So we've been talking about, shared with you all during our first episode that I've been talking to, as you all know, that I teach mid to senior level career women how to obtain professional peace. I do that with career coaching, professional development workshops, and resume strategy support. And one of the things that I'm seeing across the board as I work with these individuals who are powerful women on and off paper, but if you look on paper, you're like, whoa. But what was consistently coming up is a lack of confidence. And then I started to ask God, what is this? Starting with myself. Why am I afraid? Why do I have a lack of confidence? And the response was heart attacks on the heart. And why attacks on the heart is because it's effective. Spiritually, it's effective. If you can hit a woman over and over again in her heart, and she begins to believe something about herself that is something other than what God said, then she has a misunderstanding of herself, but then will pass that misunderstanding to her children, male and female. As the adage goes, a nation can rise no higher than its woman. Why? Because everybody's here through a woman. So if I jack her up, the nation gets jacked.
Mm-hmm.
And so heart attacks. And so digging a bit deeper, where do the heart attacks come from? And many times it's rooted in shame.
Mm-hmm.
Shame of having made a misstep. I'm so perfect. I'm expected to do this, but I didn't do that. And so now shame comes about, and I can not go as high as I'm supposed to go in my career. I'm afraid. I'm ashamed. I'm all of these beliefs that are not, they're real, but it requires going back to the shame and really unpacking those things. And so as I started looking at shame, it's a complex emotion. It's important to address because it can lead to social withdrawal, impacting you in your personal and professional life. And it's difficult to recognize because it operates below conscious awareness. And we can fear, we call it fear, procrastination, etc. But it's all disguised shame. And research further indicates that shame keeps individuals trapped in cycles of self-blame, emotional withdrawal, all of that stuff. Now, shame, like fear, can be a good thing because, if you're ashamed, you like, I'm not going to do this because of shame. So it keeps back to those guardrails, kind of keeps you in a certain space. But it is so complex that sometimes we have to go back to what made me feel this way.
Mm-hmm.
Was it something that you did? And for me, it has been rooted kind of really those relationship things, male-female relationships, where I feel like I've made missteps in those situations. And the reason that's powerful is because it goes against what I was expected to do. even though the decisions that I made were normal, like decisions. I mean, people every day. But I'm feeling like I know I'm not the only one. But again, it goes back to when I did something wrong, it felt like the spotlight was on it. And it's like, why can everybody else do whatever? But something my husband told me, he said, it's because people, well, goody-two-shoes, he didn't say this word, but the phrase was, is because you care too much. Meaning you care so much about maintaining and doing the right thing that when you mess, people know that. And when you mess up, they're so eager to expose the mess up. Whereas people out here who don't care, whatever, and folks go on about their business. But you actually care about your reputation. You care about what other people think. And so it feels more, it just feels like there's more of a spotlight. And so it shapes how you show up in the world. And I think it's important to go back to those shameful places and understand that even in those moments, God will and can use those moments. And for me, it meant in prayer, going back to everything, listing them. I wrote them down, everything that I felt ashamed about. And just saying, this is what it is, because here's the thing. I was too ashamed to even admit it to God. Even though God is God, I didn't want it to come out of my mouth. And that is when I did the research, this is what people do. They don't want to tell friends. They don't want to tell therapists. And you don't even want to tell God. But in doing that, what came back is asking myself, why did you do those things? And I got understanding. It's not that you were a bad person. You did some of those things for a real reason. And it boiled down to acceptance and validation. And even though I received lots of love, acceptance, and validation from my family and the larger community, it was that one relationship, not blaming anyone, but with my dad, where I didn't get that. So it's amazing how you can have it from a large group of people, but one single person can really shape how we go through life. And interesting that publicly, all the praises of his beloved only child, but privately not being able to show it in all of the ways that mattered. Right? So that shame piece, I think, is something that needs to be talked about, not just in, it just needs to be talked about. And I think it is a component in my practice where people have been thrown off a little bit. I remember the first time I shared it, I didn't honestly know how major it was. There were women in this gathering who started to cry and leave the room. I did not know. I didn't know what I just was led to do it. But coming face to face, finally being brave enough to say, this is what I'm ashamed of, but still being brave enough to unpack all of the components of it so that those cracks, God can mend them together and he can begin to shape us and mold us and push us forward into the places and spaces he wants us to go. But it could be so under the radar. You think you're beyond it. Oh, I'm good. No. And it hurts. Oh, God, it hurts for sure. But God is available. He was there. God is available and can use when I say all of it, I mean all of it. And now I'm able to take those things and share them age appropriate with Jada, my daughter. I started talking about things very young. And now we're at another phase that she's about to go off to college where there's even more stuff to share. And I'm glad I can say, hey, consider this. Look out. This is what I did. And I'll close here. Not to be judgmental, right? Because we can see people making missteps and we can label them. We can say, oh, she's this and that and this and that. I'm like, ooh, wait. You don't know what's going on in that person's life. So before you judge, before you say what you wouldn't, couldn't, shouldn't, wait a minute, you don't know what you will do under certain circumstances because life does life. And even with our beloved church folk, wait a minute. You see there's a problem here, but have you talked to the person? Did you pray for them? Or were you on the phone gossiping about what you think you know? That's what's going on. Look at the other side of the coin and be willing to be transparent with other people. You may not share your shame and your story like in front of a whole congregation, but maybe there's one person. But in order for you to be an effective component in that person's life, you have to have done the work enough for you to even be able to utter it to somebody else.
Wow. Absolutely. Wow. This is, I don't even know where to begin. I think there's a couple of things as we move through the rest of our discussion. It's interesting how the Holy Spirit will take our conversations in a direction that you never really expect. And although we were sharing a lot about how our lives have been ordered, steps and missteps have all been ordered. God knowing that whatever detour, misstep, mistake was going to happen, he knew before it would happen, and there was always a purpose that it was to accomplish. I think the fact that we added an additional dimension up to it because we are Black women. So there's a whole nother dimension to how our lives have been ordered because of how God created us, again, with purpose. So as we go back and we hope the women that are listening as well, that you realize or try to better understand why you believe you have misstepped. In what context do you view now what you've considered a mistake? What you've considered things that you've done that you've deemed shameful because it's shameful in your own head because you've been too afraid to share that with anyone. So it's still there because you've not released it as such. And when you think about it, unfortunately, in this country, culture has shaped a lot of our measuring standard of what we're supposed to be as people. And so it's not just Black, it's not just Black women, it's almost all of humanity because they've chosen to measure people according to a cultural standard as Karen started from the beginning. And it was never God's purpose. It was never his purpose.
That part.
I mean, just think about it. And when you think about how you were created And all of us have been created with a specific purpose. If you read your Bible, and this is for everyone that's viewing, every character that he identified or that is identified in the Bible had some type of shortcoming. From one extreme to the other. Moses was a murderer. Noah was a drunk. Gideon was a coward. Come on. You wanted to see.
Right.
This is about who you think you are at all. Rahab the prostitute.
Yes.
Come on. He was very, very clear. That's not my standard. I don't know where y'all get that from. That has never been my standard.
Oh, God.
I will pick what everybody else considers the least or the most unqualified to shine as who I have chosen, have anointed, and assigned for a specific purpose. And so that brings us back to understanding, was it a misstep? And was that misstep ordered? Was it something that the Lord, where you thought was a setback, but it was a setup? Because he knew that but he wanted us to get to a point where we reflected back on those moments and came to the realization, what was it and why? I've heard, you can be authentic with everyone. You can only be transparent with some, depending upon how you're led. But you should always be the person that you were created to be, against God's standards and nobody else. And I think that's where we are hoping, as women are listening to us today, to go back and find your authentic self. Find that person that God created you to be. And then move. It's like reflect momentarily, because you don't want to stay there. You don't want to stay back there, wherever that past took you. You don't want to stay there, but you want to see how your steps have been ordered from that point. And some of the things that you can look back and say, oh, I get it now. There was one in particular, and I'll share just this quickly, and then we can, go however the conversation directs. But in my early 20s, I decided that I was going to be adventurous. And I won't even go into the backstory because it's unimportant.
Okay.
Okay. But I ended up in Texas. I, gave up everything and I went to Texas. The worst 5 months of my life at the time. I'm sure there have been other moments beyond, but I ended up in Texas for whatever reason. And the interesting part, when I look back on it, because God has a very interesting way of you being in the right place at the right time when you think it's the worst place at the wrong time. And he ends up using that for one little thing, which becomes huge. And so before I get too deep into it, I went to Texas. Shortly before I knew I had to come back home, I got my job. I applied for a job at Xerox and I got it. And I told the lady, it's like, I really appreciate you, but I got to go home. And so she assured me that, well, I understand. I'll give you a pretty good reference when you get back, because interestingly enough, there was a Xerox building right in Rosslyn, Virginia. So I just take my happy self over to Rosslyn, Virginia, and they had an opening in the call center, which is the job that I had when I was in Texas. So I told the lady that, I've been trained, I've had all the training, I can do the job, and this was my manager. Well, lo and behold, the manager did not give me the raving recommendation that I thought she would have for the short period of time that I was with them. But I'll never forget it. The lady's name was Adele, and she said, you have the job. The moral of that story for me was what I thought was the hugest misstep I could have made in my life, to quit my job, sell everything, put everything I could carry into a truck and go to Texas, enabled me to get my job at Xerox that carried me for 30 plus odd years. Now I can say now, Lord, you couldn't have found another way
Right.
to open up a door for me to have what I found to be an amazing career by going to Texas. Was that a setup or a setback? I mean, that was huge. That was huge. And I will declare to this day, the Lord took me all the way to Texas so he could open up a door for me to start my career. How many missteps have you taken that were huge? And when you look back and it's like, OMG, he did all of that for me to be what I thought in the wrong place, but he did it so I would be at the right place at the right time, at the right moment. So we're hoping, as you review in your lives what you thought was a huge misstep, God was like, yeah, I know. It's okay. And now you share it, some of you, in those moments of shame. Now, again, I don't know your story, but in those moments of shame when you said, oh my God, and if you knew the reason why I ended up in Texas, you were like, girl, you were stupid. Wow, so ridiculous. Oh my, but again, I can share it now and say, okay, I did it. But in that moment, having to call my dad and say, and he was like, okay, baby, I'll send you the money. No questions, no ifs, no ands, no whatever. And my father and I did not have the most amazing relationship, but in that moment, I was on a plane the next day. It was just that simple. But God ordered my steps in a way that I could not have ever imagined. Any thoughts, ladies? As we kind of reframe our missteps as divine steps that were ordered, that we had no clue.
I think the question you're leaving everyone with, and it's a great, straightforward question: was it really a misstep? I think that's an awesome question to ask, and it enables everyone watching, and for the three of us, to go back in time and look at those components. Was it really? And in preparation for our conversation, I wrote down 3 major areas where I've wondered, was it a misstep? For those who are watching, and I'm just going to venture to say that most folks who have decided to get married, at some point in your marriage, you probably said, did I misstep? Did I marry the right one? For many different reasons. I've talked to you all about the big opportunity I had at a major nonprofit organization where my direct report stepped away to take another role, and I was asked if I wanted it. I've asked myself, was that a misstep? Should I have moved in that direction? Now, in retrospect, no, I made the right decision. But especially when I experienced the layoff, when I experienced trying to build this business, should I have taken that? Because I would probably be employed. I would probably be on this national stage. I would probably be, all of those things. But when I think about the trade-offs and what needed to be and where I needed to be, had I taken that role and remained, I wouldn't have been able to fulfill these other roles in the way that I needed to. And I don't think that I would have had the space to be as introspective as I've been able to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've shared the various relationships, the sagas, the relationship sagas, and the decisions that I, have made over the years. And yes, when I look back at some, I'm like, what were you thinking about? But at the same time, you only know what you know at the time. And you made the decision that you made for that time. Would you make it again? No. With more knowledge, hopefully, we make better choices.
Mm-hmm.
But was it really a misstep?
Mm-hmm.
Is a great, great question. I think that we should all ask ourselves, especially as we're preparing to move into another year.
Mm-hmm.
And thinking about what we want. How do we want to move? And what can we do to free ourselves up from the things that are holding us back? Was it really a misstep?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's really good. I don't have a specific instance of, like anyone, there's any number of missteps, moments that I've considered in my past. But the thing that really is standing out for me in this moment with that question is the reframe. And what I have learned is, for me, what has worked in freeing myself from the pain and shame and angst of, oh, was that a misstep? Or, I should have done something different, is really, reframing what that is, the same way that we would do for students. A mistake is not bad. It helps you to learn, right? Gives you the opportunity to try again, that sort of thing. And I'm thinking about that Nelson Mandela statement that, I never lose. I either win or I learn something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so in the times where I am tempted to go back, or my mind lands on a memory of a painful moment that comes up because I thought I had a misstep or because I thought it was a setback, I'm learning to put a new lens on it, and think about it as, ooh, what did I learn from that moment? Right? What did I get from it? How did it build me? And then from that development, what did I win? So I really am practicing that.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I want to leave you with the scripture, of course. And this is what it says. The Lord directs the steps of the godly. He delights in every detail of our lives. Though we may stumble, we will never fall, for the Lord is holding our hand. So whenever you think that you have fallen, just know that the Lord has your right hand. Should I close? Any closing thoughts?
I am so appreciative for this conversation. I know that it is going to enable so many people to unlock their own chains.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep.
I think sometimes we're in cages, but we hold the key. No one else is holding it. And so all we need to do is push the door open. And so I'm really excited about that. And I just want to share one statement that I heard over the weekend, and I want to leave it for everyone listening. And this is how I have felt and determined to move forward. And as Karen said, I've never lost, but I've learned a lot.
Mm.
And the statement is, this person said, I'm tired of not valuing myself. I'm tired of not valuing, or I'm tired of devaluing myself. And when we start to value and start to understand that we really are God's divine creation. I mean, like for real, believe that, not just lip service to it, that it attaches to our spirit. And even just a relationship with God to really embrace it. And I think I was sharing with you, Candy, how, we read, many read the Bible and it's like a check off. Like I read scripture today. No, for me, sometimes it's just 3 words. And I was reading Isaiah 43:1. Don't know what I was looking for. And 3 words popped out at me. And the words were, you are mine. You belong to me. That when the flood comes, you won't be consumed. When the fire comes, you won't be scorched or burned. I am the Lord your God. And it's our choice to really believe that. But once we begin to believe that, then that's when the value comes in. And then that's when we have the boldness to go back, reframe, look at what we call missteps, and then be able to walk away from that, seeing that those missteps are ordered.
Amen.
But in that ordering, like everything else with God, God's a gentleman. It's a choice. Are you going to continue to see it as a misstep, or are you going to see it as an ordered opportunity? It's all up to us.
Amen. Amen. Okay. Well, the one thing I didn't do as facilitator, and that is I hope that something has been said that has blessed you and just made you take a pause. And if that is you, we would love for you to click the QR code at the corner of your screen and join us. It's just a place of community, of fellowship, of sisterhood, and obviously you see with the conversations we hope that we have been transparent and showed you that we want to be our authentic selves in front of you and to help you to do the same. So you are the oasis, and you carry the peace that you seek. And for myself and all of my Oasis guides, we bid you adieu, and we hope to see you next time.